even let you rest and wash. And after you're rested and washed and you've eaten, they may come to you and say, "What's your name?" And sallallahu alaihi wasallam when she was taking the Zawiyatuna nisa, and he said, "Wala tazni." She said, "Al-hurra tazni." Would a free woman commit adultery? No, she won't, because she is a woman of principle. And the hurra in Arabic, they're free because they are slaves to principles. They will hold to their principles. That's our concept of freedom. And that's a beautiful concept. Freedom is another one of those plastic words in the West. Like, where does it begin? Where does it end? What does it mean? And it's said that freedom is the greatest value in the Western world. And in the Muslim world, freedom was never the greatest value. What was? Justice. Justice. And I think I prefer justice. Because justice has meaning. Justice is concrete. And we know where it goes. Again, we have a maxim in Islamic law. Tarkul aada adawa. Tarkul aada adawa. Abandoning good cultural convention is an act of aggression. In Islamic law, wherever we live, in whatever culture we may be, we have to accept the good aspects of that culture and incorporate them in our own lives. Al-ada muhakkama. That is a basic principle of Islamic law by consensus. And then we say, tarkul ada adawa. Not following good cultural conventions. If you're Lebanese, you have good cultural conventions. If you don't follow them, that is adawa to the Lebanese people. You have to keep the good cultural conventions. But another form of that same maxim is, excuse me, tarkul aadat tadullu ala al-mu'adat. Tarkul aadat tadullu ala al-mu'adat. And actually this maxim that I just mentioned, it pertains to things like speech. It means, again, abandoning good cultural conventions indicates aggressions, acts of aggression. But here it meant really not giving salams, not talking to people. When we came here, they say bonjour. So what do you say? Bonjour. You don't say, no, assalamu alaikum. Maybe they're not Muslims. I don't know if they are or they're not. But he said bonjour, I'd say bonjour. Okay, this is the correct thing to do. And there are all kinds of conventions like that. So we have to honor these and respect them. And so also in speech, although we want to avoid what does not concern us, and we don't want to speak superfluously, you've got to also know the culture. There's certain things you've got to say. There's certain things that you've got to do. If you go with Arabs, as you know, kayfa haluka, you've got to say it at least 3 times. Kayfa haluka, kayfa haluka, kayfa haluka, right? And so you have to do that. You just have to do it because it's an aada. Now, this is the advice of Ibn Abbas, God be pleased with him and his father. And this is really important. Even when you do speak about what concerns you, be sure to find the right time and the right place and the right situation. Okay, this is also very important. And this is something natural, but I remember, for example, we were just in Hajj. Brother Ahsan was with us, and in our Hajj, mashallah, we walked more than 50 miles. How do I know that? Because people checked it on their cell phones. Okay, but sometimes when we're walking, a brother would come up and ask me a really difficult question. Okay, now this question concerns you, but this is not the time. Like I'm actually tired, and also I'm looking where I'm walking. Sometimes we're walking through garbage. Yeah. And this is not the time to ask me a philosophical question about predestination, for example. That's really cool. but let's find another time. And again, I have to learn how to not be rude. You know, and you know, because you don't want to hurt their feelings either. But it's really important. There is a right time for everything. So when you have something important to say or to ask, find the right time for that. And beware of the wrong time for that.
But how did you answer him?
I'm usually challenged in this regard. So I'm usually rude. And I ask God to teach me not to say no. And, you know, I just say, ask me when we get to the tent. That's what I say. But I don't think I said it in the nicest way. So a lot of them didn't even come to ask me. I thought, you can ask me now. But it's like, no, you don't want me to ask you. No, I just don't want you to ask me, you know, right now in the hot sun when we're walking 50 miles, right? So this is even our best. Look for the right time and the right situation. Now, commanding right and forbidding wrong. Al-amru bil-ma'ruf wal-nahyu 'anil munkar. Okay, now this is one of the best speech acts of all. But it has to be done with wisdom, with dignity, and in a way that preserves the dignity of others. And it doesn't mean you shout at them, this is haram, don't do it. You know, this is wajib, you have to do it. That's not enjoining right and forbidding wrong. Again, there has to be the concern, you know, of truth. You know, I remember in the Haram, I saw a Pashtun there. And I don't, if he belongs to the Taliban, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, and so a person comes and wants to pray after Asr. And he said in horrible Arabic, La'ana Allahu al-Musalli. That's what he said. God curse the person making prayer. It's like, brother, you don't know Arabic, you should shut up. I mean, what is God going to write for him in that? But what he means is that you should be praying at this time. Yeah, but that's if you prayed Asr. And it's also if you're not a Shafi'i, or if you're not a Shi'i. Okay? And the fact that Hanafis regard that time to be prohibited, and so do Malikis, that does not justify at all your commanding them. And he said, La'an Allah al-Musalli. This is stupidity, isn't it? Okay, and he thinks he's enjoying, and he's proud of himself. He was proud of himself. Okay, so first of all, the truth, that for something to be something that is to be commanded or to be prohibited, it must be a matter of consensus among all of the ai'. Okay, so do you know that? What if a brother's wearing a gold earring? Is that haram? For Imam Shafi'i, it's not if it's plated, if it's not solid gold. So you don't tell him anything. Just leave him alone. Just leave him alone. You've got to know truth content. And moreover, will it harm? Will it benefit? What if what you're going to say is right, but it might harm him because it might drive him out the door? There's some people that you just can't correct them. It's not the time or the place for that. And will it benefit him? Will he listen to it? So in enjoining right and forbidding wrong, you have those same standards that do it in a nice way and make sure that you have the knowledge for it. And for that reason, enjoining right and forbidding wrong in traditional Muslim society was usually regarded as fard al-kifaya, a societal obligation done by muhtasibs, done by big people in the society who are like judges in the street, and they usually do it beautifully. And as Imam al-Ghazali says, take the person aside, maybe give them a cup of tea and talk to them, and then gradually bring them to understand the truth. Superfluous speech. Again, the Prophet's mode of speaking was completely non-superfluous. Jawami al-kalim, concise words with precise meanings and vast indications. There was nothing superfluous about his speech. His speech is very careful, very brilliant. He didn't waste a single word, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we need to strive to do this also. So when we speak, we should exercise temperance, and we have to control our tempers and also our passions. Temperance is like trying to be balanced. And temper, try not to get angry. This is one of my problems. If I get angry, it's a mess, and may God give us control over things like that. Because then you say things that are too strong, they're too emphatic, and often they're harmful. The same thing with our passions. What is superfluous speech? Fudul al-kalam. Superfluous speech often overlaps with speaking about what is not our concern. It's not easy always to make a distinction between the two. Imam al-Ghazali points that out. But seek economy in carefully picking the words that you use, just like a poet does, or just like a writer. In fact, a writer, if a writer is a good writer, one of the main things that you've got to learn is delete. In fact, if you write a piece of prose that is good, probably you've got to delete 1/3 of it at least, and then it will be lean, and it will be beautiful. So you want to avoid everything superfluous in it. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Imam al-Ghazali says, whenever one word is enough, 2 words are too much. Whenever one word will do it, 2 words are too much. We must learn to speak briefly and to the point. Again, though, you've got to remember the culture we live in today, because we live in a very talkative culture, and therefore sometimes we have to repeat things over and over again because people don't tune in unless you do that. So again, it's got to be right for the time. But we strive for a norm where we don't talk too much and where every word is where it ought to be. We must learn to get to the point. We must foster among ourselves a culture that understands the value of speaking briefly and to the point, and that is not suspicious of silence or pleased with chatter. This is one of our problems, because we live in a society in my country where people are suspicious of silence. Why is he not talking? He doesn't like me. Why are you not talking? What did I do to offend you? And then we're happy with chatter. Well, that means you have to chatter a little bit too, right? But we want to try to cut down on the chatter, and we want to try to permit for silence. And, actually one of the beautiful things, when we ride, we have good company, riding, for example, here, which was a couple of hours from Beirut because of the traffic. Mashallah, the driver of the car is one of my favorite people on earth. And Sheikh Muhammad sitting in the back, and I'm sitting in the front seat. We probably didn't say more than 10 words the whole trip. Why? Because everybody's doing their dhikr. And was anybody offended? No. In fact, we honor that. Okay, so this is a culture that we foster and we have to create. But if people don't have that culture, you've got to go to them where they are. We must, again, strive to put our tongues where? Behind our hearts. To put our tongues in obedience to our intellects. So it is excessive because it says more than needs to be said. It says too much and much more than is enough. It happens when I came into this beautiful country. my name in my passport is Umar Farouk Abdullah, and they asked me, "Are you an Arab?" No. Where'd you get this name? Dun, 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 dun. And this time, actually, I had to produce my birth certificate. Fortunately, it's here on my computer. I changed my name officially, in 1972. I had to show them the name change. And I had to show them my mother's picture and all kinds of other things, But one of the things I remember is don't volunteer information. Because when you're dealing with the police, when you're dealing with customs, just answer his question. Don't volunteer anything. You will get yourself in trouble. And this is also avoiding superfluous speech. Every question he asks, answer. Answer it truthfully or you'll be in trouble. But don't be volunteering information. Superfluous speech always reflects lack of good judgment and lack of self-control. Lack of good judgment and lack of self-control. Often it is careless and heedless. By the way, I shook the people's hands when I left. I don't have anything against them. And, but he told me, he said, in the future, always travel with your birth certificate and always travel with your official name change. And so I said, thank you, I'll do it. I'll do it for sure. This is how we learn. And ironically, every Arab country, but very few, that I've ever been to, they have a big issue that, okay, where'd you get this name? You're not an Arab? And of course, if you were an Arab, that's a big problem too. Which kind of an Arab? Are you a Syrian? I remember going to Morocco and they said, are you a Syrian? I said, no. I had a Syrian friend with me and they sent him back to France. But I learned that to go to Morocco, the best thing is just parler français. Right? Je suis américain, je voudrais entrer. Then they, oh, come in, please. But you speak Arabic, that's your biggest mistake ever. Oh, my goodness. Again, though, there is no black and white. There are many colors and many shades of colors and many shades of gray. So you've got to exercise judgment. You've got to be on your toes. You must understand your audience and their culture and their needs. You must also know their red flags. You've got to know their red flags, their buttons, because people have been through trauma and people have been through hell in many cases. So you may say something that you mean no harm by, and yet it sets off all these reactions that you won't be able to control after that. May Allah give us this wisdom. And this is where we help each other. This is where we help each other. Because if I'm dealing with Brother Ali's audience, he knows a lot more than I do. So he can teach me, and he has to teach me. And, if we're dealing with other people, maybe you know something I don't know. So we've got to know who are the people that we're talking to. Don't push their buttons. And be careful how you speak to them. At the same time, we cannot be mechanical robots. Sometimes extensive speech is necessary. Sometimes superfluous speech is not superfluous. Repetition is often required in training and in teaching. Our acts of speech must be generous. They must be hospitable, and they must be amiable. There is a time and place for everything under heaven, as Solomon said, peace be upon him, at Sulaiman. There is a time and place for everything under heaven. The Prophet ﷺ warned against superfluous speech. In a Hassan transmission, he says, "Tuba liman amsaka al-fadla min lisanihi wa anfaqa al-fadla min malihi." Very beautiful. Good tidings to anyone who holds back, who refuses to give from the excess of his tongue, and who spends freely from the excess of his wealth. Very, very beautiful. Imam al-Ghazali says, after giving us that hadith, consider how people today have turned everything upside down. So today we refuse to give from our excess wealth, but we're ready to spend freely from our excess speech. Ata ibn Abi Rabah, may God be pleased with him, he said that it was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the practice of the companions and the successors, whom he knew very well, to avoid all superfluous speech, even in the mubah, even in permitted things. And superfluous speech for the companions and for the successors was regarded as careless, heedless, and blameworthy. Imam Malik used to say, such and such a person is such a good man, but for the fact that he speaks in a day the words of an entire month. He talks too much. Ata ibn Abi Rabah said, those who were before you, meaning here the prophets, the companions, and the old successors, greatly disliked superfluous speech. They greatly disliked al-fudul min al-kalam. Let me give you a beautiful example of the wisdom of Luqman al-Hakim in avoiding superfluous speech. So it's said that Luqman once came to visit the great prophet David. And the prophet David knew these mountains, by the way, and so did Solomon. And Solomon would come here to Lebanon to take beautiful timbers, which were used to build the haikal, the temple. And the temple was very much like the Kaaba, by the way. The real temple is like the Kaaba. Then they build another building around it, just like in Mecca, we have the Kaaba and the Grand Mosque. And the same thing was in Jerusalem. But they knew these lands. They came to these lands. Lebanon is the land of milk and honey. The land of milk and honey. Beautiful land. It is actually, in my belief, a holy land. This is also a holy land. Isn't that Elijah's land? The land of the prophet Elijah, Ilyas, and Al-Yasa', who is his successor. But they say that Luqman came to visit the prophet David, and the prophet David is the one who learned and taught how to make armor, okay, and how to work with steel and iron. So he found David busy making armor. This is a Davidic innovation. And Luqman didn't know what it was. But he didn't want to ask either, because that's wasting words. And therefore his wisdom made him hold his tongue. And Dawood kept working and working and working. And then he finished his work and he lifted up the armor to admire it. And he said, what an excellent piece of armor for battle. And Luqman said, silence is wisdom. But very few are capable of it. And Luqman was uplifted by the fact that he got the answer to his question without asking the question. And you can do the same thing. And again, when we talked about the questions not to ask people, like your lineage, okay? Let them talk. Listen to them. And then you will find out, enough so that you know what's safe to say and what's not safe to say. And again, using this wisdom of Luqman, it's very good if we can get what we need without asking for it. And you can do that. You can do that. And, it's fun to do. It's fun to do. That, you don't have to ask the question, just wait. They're going to tell you, and they do often. So we're late, and I don't know what I'm going to do because we're getting behind. But we want to talk about contentiousness, mirah. Now this is bad speech. And we want to talk about argumentativeness, jidal or jadal. And we want to talk about litigiousness, which is khusuma, going to court. I'm going to take you to court. I'm going to sue you. Right? My country is very litigious. Okay, so first of all, contentiousness, which is mira, contentiousness. Imam al-Ghazali explains being contentious means objecting to what another person has said just to show you object. That's contentiousness. To object to what another person has said to show its defects. We may object to the wording he used. Like your grammar is not right. Or, for example, well, what do you mean by that? And also, that's contentiousness. This, but he meant that. And this, again, in a lot of our cultures, is a big problem. Is a very big problem. I taught in Arabic, by the way, at King Abdul Aziz University for 16 years. I taught comparative religion, I taught ethics, and I taught also Islamic civilization. But one of the things I had to do with my students is listen to what I'm saying, okay? And don't try to figure out what I mean, because that's always what they're doing. Like, what do you want me to say? I want you to learn what I'm saying, and I want you to master that and to be able to give it back to me. And this is, again, because of a culture that people say one thing, but they mean another. So they're always listening to you, but then trying to ferret out, what do you mean? And what do you want from me? I remember people coming to me in my office, God bless them and guide them, who want to know, would you like to buy a new car? It's like, look, I'm here to teach ethics. I'm here to teach comparative religion. I've got a good car. I'm not interested in buying a new car. Like, what can I do for you to get a good grade? I said, you can do one thing, learn your material, or I'll help you. And that was hard. That's a hard lesson. And I do flunk people. I flunked a lot of people. In the end, I had some really good department heads who were Saudis, but a lot of them were, one of them was a Uyghur, for example, from China, who came to Saudi Arabia in the 1940s. He was the best one. I loved him. And he was always on my side. But then finally, we got, forgive me for saying this, but a Saudi head of the department, and the first thing he did to me is, your courses are too difficult. Change your book and make the questions easy on the exam. I told him no. And then, unfortunately, it was war after that. And then the only thing I would hear from him was no. Can I use the photocopy machine? No. Okay. We'll get around it. But contentious people rarely listen carefully to what others say. And this is what you want to do, is to listen to what others say. It's so valuable to do that. And also, it saves you the burden of speech. You're not going to be judged. Just listen. But contentious people, they usually will never listen. They're ready to fight from the first word. Their concern is to detect defects that reflect the defectiveness of the speaker. God bless you all. I remember one time I was given a class, and a particular person عن أمور فإنه لن يبلغ الكمال إلا من غفر. Everything he says is funny, by the way. So that's also funny. But he says that overlook things, many things, as if you didn't see them, because only that person can attain perfection who is negligent. That's, of course, he's being funny. But it's like you've got to act as if you're negligent. And if you're going to be pointing out every detail and following up everything, then you won't become perfect yourself. Overlook. Again, in martial arts, one of the first things that you're taught is to have this feeling for the kick or the punch, or the arrow, or the sword. Is it going to hit me or not? Because if it's not going to hit me, I don't do anything. You don't block anything that's not going to hit you. Okay, so the same thing, we have to look at the things that are really important, and that we respond to, and let the other things go. And Imam al-Ghazali then says, whenever someone says something to you, acknowledge it to be true and accept it if it is true. No matter who says it, whether it's the biggest enemy you've got, but if it's true, it's true. And if you can't do that, keep silent. If it is not true, he said, if it is not true, but is not a critical matter, then just keep silent and smile, or do something else good. If it's not something that pertains to fundamental religious truth or to fundamental rights and duties that pertain to this world. To agree with people as much as we can, even when they're wrong, is an act of good character. America had its revolution in 1773. Brother, that's not true. 1776. You didn't have to say anything. Just let it go. You don't have to correct him. If it's a serious matter, then you correct it. Otherwise, it's better just to be agreeable and let it pass. You don't have to correct everything. And a lot of times we feel we have the moral obligation to set everything right, and that's not true. That makes you very contentious, and it makes you unwelcome company in the end. We put our contentiousness aside when we are careful not to disapprove of or object to what people say, unless we have compelling religious and worldly reasons to do that. That's an important lesson, isn't it? And that's a difficult lesson for me. That's a difficult lesson. Be agreeable as much as you can be, and don't think that you're being faithless. No, you're just being nice and letting people warm up to you. And when you speak, you'll speak the truth, and you'll say, in 1776, when we had a revolution, okay? You don't have to go back and correct it. We're out of time? Oh, okay, well, argumentativeness. So that's what we come back to, inshallah, tomorrow. And you're a beautiful audience. You're wonderful people. I'm so thankful for all the work you've done for this beautiful retreat. It's one of the best, I think, that I've ever been in. And we'll say after the end, right? But and again, this has a lot to do with the beautiful volunteers and also our wonderful sister and brother. But also, I have to say, I don't know if this is Lebanese or if it's just Shami or what it is, but attention to details, these beautiful little details. This is so cool and it's so good. And I remember that, we have the Makan in Beirut. Now we're going to have a new Makan, which is going to be much bigger, by the way. But the thing I liked best about the Makan was that sign that said, too much of a good thing may be good for you. We always say too much of a good thing may be bad for you. And it says too much of a good thing may be good for you. Right? So, inshallah, God accept from us this retreat, and we're in for a lot of wonderful. I'm sorry we had to cut Brother Ali and Brother Barakah short this morning, but that was a beautiful session, a priceless session. We've got Sidi Abdul Karim coming up, and then we've got Brother Ali and Brother Ahmed James again this evening. So we'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you later, Brother.